Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for waiting while I organized my life. I am running late this morning, so thank you for waiting, and sorry for the echoey music. You're completely right, DNF fan. I had my desktop audio on at the same time as the main audio, and so you were hearing it twice, producing an echo. So if you ever hear that, that's the problem, is OBS is actually running it twice. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is, whenever it is you are. I don't think you expected this morning to start with technical advice on how to live stream, but there you go. It's a full service channel that I'm offering you guys here. Yeah, so let's have a little bit of talk. What I thought we could do today, like, you know, I say we as if you guys have like a say in this. You're along for the ride. I want to talk a little bit about the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. To honor her, I need to stop my verbal pauses. Oh, my window's loud. Anyway, a friend of mine got, there we go, mug for me a couple years back. It's the notorious RBG, and I've drunk out of it happily and, you know, with gratitude. And today, even more so. Her life, it will be remembered in terms of judicial history. She will definitely be a justice for whom people make references to and cite going far, far into the future. So I'm on an angle, and this is new. Well, this is what you call getting up late, getting distracted, realizing, damn girl, you really need to sort your hair out before you get on camera. And then when I did get my hair sorted out and everything, it was already 12 o'clock. I was like, I go live, put on music, do something. So my normal setup is I'm a little bit disheveled here compared to normal. But that's life. We're just rolling with it. Yes, let's see. Huge FU to recommending Glinner videos. What is up with who recommends Glinner videos? Does he even make videos? See, I try to avoid that POS, so I don't know. I try to ignore him mostly. But if he's got bigoted videos on YouTube, that's crap. That's absolute rubbish. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. What can you say really about? I mean, what could I say more about the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg? She was a trailblazer. When she first graduated with her degree, she wasn't getting jobs because there was so much sexism back in the early part of the 1970s, late 60s, that she was not being evaluated based on merit, purely based on her gender identity. We'd say now sex. Back in the day, now we understand it's not a binary, and that things are complicated. She's a justice for whom, a lot of times when there would be a division, she would write the opinion for the majority. She's been an amazing advocate. I love the answers she gave. And this is such a sort of like, we're going to talk about critical theory in a second. I want to just sort of explore what critical theory is and ways that it's been used in different disciplines. But she was asked, how many women would you be satisfied with when we finally, like, what's the number of women that would make you satisfied in terms of, like, seeing them on the Supreme Court? I know that that's phrased better, but it's morning and stuff. And her answer was, well, 9. Like 9 justices. If we had 9 women, then yeah, I'll be happy. And people were sort of, I think, generally taken aback. As if when cis men got 100% of something, women should be happy with only getting half. And her point was, well, if there were 9 men, cis dude justices on the court, why can't we have 9 women? And that is a kind of, a non-appeasement thinking that I liked about her, because she didn't just look for, let's say, the easy goal. She actually went for the principles. She asked about the fundamental structure of things and the impact it would have on people's lives and what it meant for the law to say something. So, I think everyone on the left felt that blow, especially, and I'm really glad we didn't see it coming. Can I be honest? She's so brilliant and so tactical in the fact that she didn't put out information. There was no leaking that she was ill. There was no sort of like death watch of getting updates on her condition, right? Because I think she knew it would be a distraction. I think she knew people would start talking about her death before she was even dead. And honestly, as soon as it was announced, there was about a 2-minute beat where people went, and then they processed it. And then the next thought is, who's the next justice? So, I mean, I don't have personal knowledge that this was a plan for her, that she had actually, like organized it in this way. But she's such a brilliant woman. And there are so many reasons for her to have done that, to keep it private. And I'm not saying she owed us anything. Her life, and especially her death, is she's got a private life, and she has a right to that. And with it happening quite suddenly like this, it didn't become an issue. Now, in some ways, did Trump know stuff was going on? He did, for instance, bring out his list of Supreme Court justices, nominees, including Ted Cruz. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? And as a consequence, maybe he heard some scuttlebutt. I personally don't believe that when he heard the news and the reaction, that was actually him hearing it. I wouldn't be surprised if he'd actually heard it before, because that's some crappy play acting. Donald Trump can't act. He has no sense of humor either, in terms of like being self-aware or a little bit ironic or self-deprecating. And that kind of all doesn't matter because he's a fascist, and we know that. But immediately afterwards, we started thinking about who was going to come next. So, I'm reminded a little bit about Elizabeth I in this way, this tactic. For those of you who don't have like English history down pat, Elizabeth I was actually childless at her death. She never married. Understandably, her mom was Anne Boleyn. Okay, her dad cut off her mom's head, and early on in her life, she almost got in a lot of political trouble because some older man was trying to like hit on her. So she had an understandable suspicion of marriage. Further, as a woman in that period, and still today in some, in the religious structures, there was issues about her deference to her husband, and she, of course, could only marry a prince. So if she became deferential to a prince from another country, would that mean that England would basically become a puppet state of something like another Protestant state, or even worse, a Catholic state? But Elizabeth never named a successor, because she knew as soon as she named a successor, that person would then become the focus of intrigue and plots, and either people would line up for them and get her out, or against them and start to foment another candidate or whatever else. And so as a consequence, she's just like, I'm not going to name a successor. And that caused no end of stress to her advisors and to the country. But in the end, there was sort of a natural, well, of course, Cecil, not the original Cecil, I think his son, had, I can't remember his name now, but he started negotiations with James VI, who eventually became James I. But my point is that by not naming a successor, conversation kind of stopped at her lifetime. And people didn't know what came next, so they couldn't plan for anything. And because they couldn't plan for it, it destabilized attempts to undermine her. I think similarly, in not putting any information out that she was terminally ill or she was, very much close to death, it prevented the political discourse from being consumed with that information. I'm just repeating myself now, so I'm going to stop that. I also see people have things to say in the chat, and especially about glinner, which we know means a piece of dog poo. That's the Urban Dictionary meaning. Wanted to say coined on the happy hour by me. I'm going to take credit for that. I can't remember the episode now, but I do want to take credit for comparing him to a dog turd. Let's have a swap over Hey, look at where I'm gonna put myself right in a very awkward place right over you guys in the chat. Well, let's first see what you have to say in the chat, and then we can get on with looking at critical theory. All right. Oh, yes, a glinner. A glinner is, the handle for Graham Linehan on Twitter, and it was at glinner. And we basically just said that he was a doctor, and that glinner basically came to mean transphobic POS. And that's what he is until he changes his mind, until he understands what a complete bigot he is and how irrational he's being. Oh, yeah, no, not a mod. Well, guess who's a moderator now? Let's see, who else is in the chat that I can... Anyone else here today? No, I think so far who's talking, everybody else is a... let's see. So, Trans Gamer Girl, you are now a mod. Granted. Did I hear who his first choice is? A woman judge, a female judge in the Ninth Circuit who believes women should be subordinate to their husbands. Of course he does. Of course he does. I think the worst thing for liberation movements are the people who are actually oppressed who side with their oppressors. Like that's okay, that's not as bad as the oppressors themselves. I take it back. The second worst people. The worst people are the people who oppress and justify the oppression. The second worst people are the people who are oppressed who ally with their oppressors in order to get some sort of merit. They're never going to get equality because they're oppressed, but they can aspire to to be included slightly more into the elite circles of the oppressors. Shoo. Yeah. Welcome to the modern. I do not send cake. By the way. If anyone in the chat has anything on RBG and wants to talk about that, please let me know. Otherwise, I think we're going to be watching the funeral. There will I don't know how it's going to work in the era of COVID. However, the nation will have to stop and mourn and go through that process. I guess if we're going to talk about what happens next, from what it looks like to me, it's looking less and less likely that the Senate will be able to do anything before the election. I haven't checked this morning because I was distracted with D&D, and I'll also talk a little bit about coping mechanisms maybe in this show too. But both Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, and Susan Collins have made public statements already saying that they will not vote for a Supreme Court justice before November 3rd. And that the idea is whoever wins on November 3rd should be the person who picks the nominee. Well, Collins left... No. Murkowski left it open. She said she's not going to vote for a judge before Election Day, and Collins said the next court pick should go to whomever wins on the 3rd of September. So McConnell's already in a little bit of trouble. Now, of course, she's a politician. If she loses... Susan Collins, I'm thinking here specifically. Susan Collins loses. She might be like, okay, screw you all. I'm out of here. You suck. You're cool. You suck. But the idea of a Senate lame duck session rushing through a Supreme Court nomination between November and January when the outgoing president no longer holds power, that would be a tough sell. I'm not saying they won't do it. I mean, I don't trust the fascists, authoritarians. I don't know. There's the fascists. I don't have to come up with some neologism to kind of blend what the Republican Party's become, the Trump Party, I guess. But that would be I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't do it because they sell out their soul to the devil all the time. It would just really get a lot of backlash. And there are other senators who will be up for election. And that kind of stuff will justify them saying, well, if you're going to pack the courts with a lame duck session for an outgoing president, we're just going to add 2 more justices. So screw you guys. And if they have enough votes in the Senate to get it through, they could do that. There's no magic number for 9. FDR tried to expand the courts in order to get more justices on there that would see things his way. He also ran for president, and won 4 times. So he was around for a long time. Somewhat scary amount of, time for an executive to hold power. But in this case, there would be so much Democratic opposition. Also, the other thing to consider for after the November election is that whoever wins the Arizona seat will actually be sworn in. My understanding is if Mark, whatever his name is it Sally in Arizona, then he would actually be sworn in November because he's filling a vacancy that was left by John McCain. He's not starting a new term. So that would mean they would be down 1 Republican already, and then would have to see, what other Republicans would do. It would be a tough sell. It would definitely be a tough sell. And yeah, we can reasonably scrutinize Donald Trump's picks. It's unreasonable to ask Joe Biden to have a list of nominees at this point. He's not even president. Why would he have a vetted list of people? That kind of process takes time and years, and that's why Trump has them to hand, because he's handed names by far-right institutions. He doesn't, or for far-right think tanks. He doesn't think for himself. So, 7th Circuit. Okay, Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you, the Lucky Wanderer. We'll keep an eye out for his choice, her name. What else have we got? We have both said a lot of things that you are going to regret. Oh, about the cake. The cake is a lie. Stop lying about me sending cake, especially when the post office is. How do I think the Republican supporters will act if the Dems expand the Supreme Court? They'll be mad, but there's no reason. I mean, again, there's nothing in the Constitution that says it has to be 9. And here's the thing. When Democrats hold themselves to these norms and these standards, then when Republicans blow through them, we unilaterally disarm. And if there were 2 more seats, I support the statehood of Washington, D.C. I think they deserve more than taxation without representation. D.C. should be a state. So that's going to change the balance in the Senate, because you're going to get 2 more senators and you're going to get a voting member in the House. I also support the statehood of Puerto Rico. I mean, there's nothing magic about 50. There's nothing magic about 50. We had 49, we had 47, we had 32, and that's going to add 2 more seats. That's going to change the balance of power. But it's also completely within the framework of the Constitution. And if the Republicans are going to force through a justice, basically of a losing party, of a losing candidate for a lifelong appointment, then I think that you can't impeach a judge without cause. And the Democrats would be silly to just say, oh, well, I guess we're just going to give up and let these, the Merrick Garland thing already, Kavanaugh has got legitimacy issues because they did to Obama what they're saying they're not going to do for Trump. So you had one president who was already denied a position, and then you have a second Democratic judge or Democratic president who's denied a pick because of Republican shenanigans. Those are 2, I think, illegitimate justices. And if you want to balance out those 2 illegitimate justices with 2 legitimate justices, where is the argument against that? You're basically you're balancing the playing field back to what it should have been had people been playing by the rules originally. And so I don't think it would, I personally would see it as repairing corruption that has already distorted the process. Just like, all these attempts to fix voter suppression laws is an attempt to undo the harm being done by white supremacists. And ultimately, this is the thing that drives it. White supremacy drives all this stuff. That's what people really are protecting. That's what people are preserving, is white supremacy. I think I'm going to make my window a little bit bigger since I'm just sitting here talking anyway. It's just looking at me. The whole point of putting on these conservative justices is to preserve the holding of power in a, like in a supreme way. And by that I mean almost exclusively, right? Whites almost exclusively hold and wield political and economic power. And just having Black-owned businesses is not a counterpoint of that, right? If you look at the justice, the bench, if you look at prosecutors across the country, if you look at who runs corporations, if you look at who sits in Congress and in the White House, it is predominantly white people. White men and women, doesn't matter, it's still white people. And they hold disproportionate power to their percentage in the population. It's just true. Like, the United States is a white supremacist country. And even though the demographics demand structural changes to that, in order to, if you want a microcosm of America, if you think representation, as I do, if you think representation means having a body of Congress that looks like the population, then whites have to give up power. And some white people don't want to give up power. So ultimately what this is about is patriarchy and white supremacy. I fear if Republicans lose faith in legitimacy of the Supreme Court, they won't see the U.S. as legitimate anymore. I would argue back, Angus, they don't actually care about the legitimacy of the United States, because a lot of the core people who are pushing this are evangelical Christians or like dominionist Catholics or whatever that kind of viewpoint is. They are not loyal to the Constitution first. They see themselves as Christians first and Americans second. I mean, think about the Republican platform in 2020. This will just illustrate how legitimacy is not about documents and procedures, it's about loyalty. The Republican Party in 2020 doesn't even have a platform. It just says, we back Donald Trump. And so if you're saying they're going to lose faith in legitimacy of the court, the only legitimacy they give the court is when it decides things that upholds their power. And with something like Roe v. Wade is an entirely legitimate court decision. It established the principle of the right to privacy. That is, beyond the right to access medical procedures that are legal and safe. The important thing about Roe v. Wade is that it established the right to privacy, and that is why it is one of the most cited court cases in U.S. law. It's not because of the right to access abortion, it's about the right to privacy. But Republicans and anti-Roe people will never see that as legitimate. And so legitimacy, I don't think, is really the issue. They already don't share a left-wing viewpoint on what constitutes legitimacy. I think from a left point of view, I'm going to say generally, not everybody of course, but that we ascribe democratic legitimacy or institutional legitimacy to processes and procedures that follow an agreed upon set of rules based in democratic values. So an election is legitimate if it is free and fair, that all participants are able to engage with the process with equal amount of ease and access and the same treatment, as opposed to poll taxes and under-resourced polling locations and machines that don't work, and people forgetting to send out where your polling location is. So we would say that that process has legitimized the result. On the Trumpian side, the result is only legitimate when it gives you the outcome you want. So it's not process-based, it's outcome-based. And even though the process for Roe v. Wade is entirely consistent with other decisions, they won't accept it as legitimate. Whereas they will take something that, like the Supreme Court, which is a body designed to set precedent, interfering in the Florida 2000 state election And in their response, in their decision, they're like, don't use this decision as precedent. They're a precedent-making body. So that shows that their involvement was actually not within the court's purview, because they were basically saying, oh, yeah, we're just going to do this for you this one time. This idea doesn't apply in other cases. That's illegitimate. And yet Democrats still accepted that, and we had a peaceful transfer of power in 2000. We're not going to have that in 2020. I fear civil war. So do I. Honestly, I mean, I don't know if you're going to call it like a full-out, full-scale state vote to pick sides, but do I see a spike in violence and attacks and domestic terrorism? Absolutely. I'm very worried about that as well. And it's because Trump is already, mobilizing an army for Trump. He's already saying, if any result other than me getting elected occurs, the election's not legitimate. He's, Barr is already giving cover to white supremacist violence by talking about Antifa instead of the real threat, which is what Christopher Wray talked about this week in his testifying to Congress, that white nationalist, white supremacist, far-right groups are the biggest domestic threat to our country as Americans. So when you have a side that just won't play by the rules, yeah, that's destabilizing. That's destabilizing. And this is the road of authoritarianism that's Trump. Well, the Republicans for 40 years have been skinning like the road, greasing up the tobogganing thing, the trail, the luge, for Trump to come in, right? They've been passing Jim Crow laws all over. They've been destroying unions through right to work, a right to not get paid as much and work in dangerous conditions and get fired laws. They've worked to pack the courts with incompetent, unqualified judges who think ideologically as opposed to judicially. They've made it hard. They've done gerrymandering. Everything they've done has been about preserving white power. If you go back and look at Republican decisions in the last 50 years, and you ask, does this preserve white supremacy? And it's not just like capitalism. It's not just capitalism. It's white supremacy. And economic power is part of that. But, this is the difference between me and like leftists who think capitalism drives everything. I think politics, they think the economic structure then is a consequence for everything else, which makes no sense in my head. And whereas I think that the government structure and the culture and the society are the ways that economics then are secondary to those structures. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. I don't know who's right. But everything they do can be explained if you ask, does this advance or preserve white supremacy? And it's the perfect explanation. It's a perfect rationale that links all these things together. All right, so what else have you guys got to say here? I fear that if Republicans lose faith... Oh, yes. Where'd you go? I fear a civil war. I'm not sure I can fathom. Who's been stopping them? Because they need to wait for the seats to come free. That's what they want, though. Supreme Court is lifetime appointments. That's why reps block Obama from filling a free seat. Yeah, I mean, Eric Garland was nominated in March of 2016. And they were saying, oh, we can't do it in the last year of the presidency. Now it's like weeks away. And suddenly, oh, we can totally squeeze. Voting has started. Voting has already started. And they're like, no, we can still get it. We can still squeak one in before November. Like, no, you can't. Yes, it was just convention, add new seats. The adding... One, I wonder why the Republicans don't pack the courts themselves. They didn't organize themselves to. So, I don't actually know what it would take. I don't think it takes like a constitutional amendment. Should we look? Should we have a little look-see? What would it take? Because I know FDR did it. He tried to get it done anyway. and try to change the number of justices. I'm not sure what it takes for that. So let's have a little look-see. All right, so I'm going to swap you guys over now. I'm going to put you in the corner. Nobody puts my chat in the corner. Are we even going to get to critical theory today? I don't know. Maybe I'll just talk about the Supreme Court all day, which is fine. Well, not all day. I have a session to... Oh, I had so also, can I just... While I'm looking up... That's stupid. Bang. No! That's the opposite of what... Okay, that's bad. All right. Yeah, I had a really good D&D session last night. I'm just going to talk about that now a little bit because I can't physically go on vacation anymore, and I don't play video anymore. I mean, during COVID, and I don't play video games. And as a consequence, D&D is my vacation. Like, it is my happy place. It is my lying on the beach 2020. Last night we had a really long session. We played for 4 hours. All of us were, I think, very stressed out and needing the immersion in something different. We had also just leveled up. So a bunch of us had a... You can go watch the session if you want. It's on my Gaming with Christy, D&D Gaming with Christy channel. But it is a 4-hour session. But we just got new levels and everyone was playing with their new abilities. And at one point, we have a paladin. We have 2 clerics, a paladin, and a sorcerer or a wizard or something. He's got a pact. I forget. I think it's a sorcerer. Warlock. That's the word I'm looking for. Too many classes. And the paladin had an aura spell going that if you stayed within 30 feet of him, you got a +5 on your saves. And then I, as a cleric, a life cleric, I had given everybody Bless as a concentration spell, which gave them a 1d4 on all their saving throws. And so every time the BBEG, this big bad evil guy, or gal, or being, attacked, we basically, everyone had a chance for at least a 6 added bonus to their save to, a 9. So even in the worst case scenario, like you got base 5 + 1, you added 6 to your saving throw. We were so hard to hit until a skeleton came and knocked me in the head and broke my concentration. But, yeah, tonight, we're going to have a fun session. All right, yeah, okay, I'll do the packing. I'll do FDR Courts SCOTUS. And then I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm not going to give too much away, but in my game tonight, I have a whole little world that my players are going to be able to operate in. They're going to get lots of, not too many choices. They're going to be given paths, basically. Like, do you want to go down path A or path B? Would you like to do this or do that? And then things will sort of like shape a bit based on their decisions. But yeah, we're going to have a chance to really world build, and the players are going to be able to customize their space in a way that speaks to what they want to get out of the world or what the kind of things that they want to accomplish and achieve. And I'm hoping it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And yeah, I just need to get away. Right. So let's have a look at the Judicial Procedures Reform Bill of 1937. Oh, wow. That's a really pretty picture. That's a really well done image. Love that. I should take more cultural pictures of monuments in Germany and donate them. That would be good. Right. So how did he do this? The Judicial Procedures Reform Bill was a legislative initiative proposed by Franklin to add more justices to the Supreme Court in order to obtain favorable rulings regarding the New Deal legislation. The courts kept ruling unconstitutional. There is nothing new under the sun. I mean, we had this progressive versus regressive tension since forever. The central provision of the bill would have granted the president the power to appoint an additional justice to the Supreme Court up to a maximum of 6 for every member of the court over the age of 70. Okay, that's I can see why that's crap. You know, you should just have seats. Not sort of like, oh, look, somebody is 70 years old in 6 months, suddenly a seat becomes vacant. And then up to a maximum of 6, that seems really a lack of discretion. That seems very discretionary. And that was, since the United States Constitution does not define the size of the Supreme Court, Roosevelt pointed out was within the power of Congress to change it. I believe that's true. The legislation was viewed by members of both parties as an attempt to stack the court and was opposed by many Democrats. Yeah, I mean, I can see that's a little too much presidential discretion. I think it should be something that isn't as arbitrary as the age of a judge and up to a maximum of 6. It should just be like 2 seats to maintain, so you don't get split decision, or 4 seats, or something that makes sense, but it should be just an institutional change, not a discretionary power given to the president. Let's see what happened. I know it was obviously in legislative initiative ultimately failed. It was held up by the Senate Judiciary Committee by the Democratic committee chair, who delayed hearings, saying no haste, no hurry, no waste, no worry is the motto of this committee. As a result of his delaying efforts, the bill was held in committee and opponents credited him for its defeat. So Democrats stood up to Democrats in order to preserve the integrity of the Constitution and maintain a balance of power. Surprise, surprise. And yeah, this is when they were totally racist. This was when the party was made up of racists. But then all the racists migrated over to the Republican side. Not all of them, majority of them. But still, there is more of a sense of fair play. All right. So, how do you add Supreme Court justices? Yeah, to the Supreme Court. How would you do that? How would you go about? It would just be an act of Congress. The question is, would it require more than a simple majority? All right, should we restructure the courts? I'm a little bit suspicious of the Brookings Institute because I don't remember what their bias is. I just assume everyone's got bias today. Let's say, well, look at this. If it has a right-wing bias, we'll filter that out. Presidential campaigns, judges, Congress hasn't changed the court size since the mid-19th century. All right, so we have precedent for how to expand the court. I'm just checking all my sound. Everything's coming through. The screen looks good. Okay, that's all. Seems fine. Please don't tell me there is really an FDR Rule 34. All right, moving on. Let's see. The justices have tenure. Unsettled is whether Congress can limit justices' tenure. No, I don't care about that. Adding seats is payback. In the partisan approach, Democrats, once they are in control of the White House, would enact statutes. It's payback. How about as balance? How about we've been robbed of one Senate seat or Supreme Court pick from our side, and now you want to deny us a second, and now we're just fixing the imbalance. But yeah, so the Brookings Institute, screw these racists. I'm just looking, come on, there's any process discussion here? Are they just like going off on how bad Democrats are? Nah, they're just hating on Democrats, so screw those guys. Packing the Supreme Court justice, pack the court 17 hours. I don't know why you keep calling it packing the courts if it's rebalancing the courts. Hashtag rebalancing. Yeah, 2020 Dems expanding. That's a better term. I like that. Expanding, rebalancing. It's not packing, it's rebalancing. What day is this? This is from 2019. Well, look, if Congress did it in the mid-1900s, it clearly can be done through a congressional process. And I'm sure we are going to find out more as this plays out. Right now, Mitch McConnell doesn't seem to have sufficient votes to do it before the election. In fact, doing it before the election might agitate people to the point... I mean, it would force very vulnerable Republicans to do something that is clearly unfair. And for their base, that doesn't matter. But they still need to get swing voters. And if you're already on the bad side of a swing voter because you're backing Trump, to just blatantly be so hypocritical. And it's so easy to show Lindsey Graham being hypocritical, Mitch McConnell being hypocritical on this. And you can say, oh, Joe Biden talked about it as well. Joe Biden didn't do it. You know, I mean, Trump could, in theory, put out a name. That doesn't mean Mitch McConnell has to take it up. It's the Senate that decides its process on advise and consent. So don't tell me what, like, Biden said in March or whatever of 2016. That's not precedent. What the Republicans committed themselves to is precedent. Because they said, this is how things are going to work now. We're not going to do anything in the last year of a president's appointment. Hold me to my word. And now it's 6 weeks out and they're like, oh, maybe not. This is how white guys work. I'm sorry, but like that is the typical white supremacist. This is like, that is how the United States government operated with the native peoples. You know, it operated all the time with like, oh yeah, we'll agree to this set of rules. Oh, maybe we don't anymore. So when you talk about that slurs, it should be like white guy giver, because that's who really breaks their promises. How long have I been going? My coffee is so cold. Have I been going like 45 minutes? I don't know what's sadder. The fact that I know how... the fact that I know that the time based on the temperature of my coffee. Or that I've been babbling for 45 minutes about this. I guess it's not babbling if you guys are finding it entertaining. And entertainment and learning on stuff. But really, I had no plans to talk about this for as long as I did. So, let us do this. I'm going to dance. And also, I'm going to swap over here. And then I'm going to swap over here. Hey! I need a haircut. My hair goes... My bangs are so flat. I'm going to get more coffee. Then, in the last half of the... Since we spent the whole time talking about, like, how awesome Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, and the vacuum that's left, and also giving a little lowdown on what might happen with the courts and where things are today, because tomorrow it might be completely different. I'm going to freshen up my coffee, and I'm going to pull up the tweets from the Sargon account. So in the last half hour or so of the show, what I thought I would do is just laugh at Sargon and explain how he doesn't understand what critical race theory is, let alone what just critical theory is generally, and that he's repeating words being told to him by incompetent, unqualified BSers who do like PragerU speak in order to create a discourse that aspires to the kind of discourse that goes on in academia. And it's like they're playing at being smart, but really they're just advancing an ignorance agenda. All right. Ooh, get your ice cream. Yeah, you go get your ice cream. DNF fan, go scoop that up, or just get that out of the whole tub. Get the whole tub out. So yeah, let us. Oh, you can go back. Po Mama said, and watch the earlier part of the show, or you can go back watch part of it now because we're gonna have like a 5-minute break. So yeah. Oh, by the way, and just I have on my. I don't know if you can see this. Back when anti-Sargonism is the new punk rock. So I just thought it would be appropriate. I was wearing it already, and I saw that Sargon posted something idiotic, so on brand, and yeah, I'll just keep that on for the show. All right, get whatever tea, coffee, drinks you want. I will not have echoey music on, and we'll see each other back here in just a couple of minutes. Let's call it 5. All right, see you then. I am back early, but who cares? It's my show. I can do what I want. Get my hair. How long till Christy goes full punk for a weekend? Oh, I don't know. We could, if it wasn't for copyright, we could have a punk rock show. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Just let them fight over the royalties afterwards. And do that kind of stuff. Alright, So hey everyone, welcome back if you're back already. If you're not, get yourself sorted. Get all kinds of comfy, whatever. And I thought, just to lift our spirits, let's laugh at Carl. Let's laugh at Sargon. Because, alright. There's just so many levels of idiocy here. So many levels of what? Why would you? Who? What? Just, Alright, how's my volume? Yeah, my volume seems fine. I don't know if you guys noticed. Can we do a little test? We'll see. I have this, I keep using it because I think it does make a difference. But I think I might have talked to you guys about this already, but I haven't actually checked. So I've just now taken away, I don't know if you can hear any difference in my sound quality. I don't know why I looked over at the wall. The camera's not there. So I don't know if you notice any difference in my sound quality. But I got this cool little sound absorption thingy. And I don't have it doesn't properly sit on my stand. It's too heavy for my stand. So I just have to, I've got a really elaborate stand set up, very professional, very complicated. It's an Amazon box. I just literally stick it on there like that, so that it becomes a little place to capture audio. And before I do a show, I set up my really elaborate packaging box. Hello, traffic of Cologne. Don't know if you hear that. And then set that up here too. Maybe it's not quite high enough. Or if I put the mic down a bit, lower. Anyway, the whole point is to try to get more of a radio sound here, to try to absorb sound waves being bounced around. Your camera now looks like it's smeared with Vaseline. What? Does it? Is that better? Clearly not. I probably just smeared it more. It looks okay from my side, but anyway. Yeah, so, distraction. Chrissy's just distracted. A little bit of a airhead moment there. Right, let's look at no more soft focus. Okay, hold on. Like, Totally professional look going on. All right. If you watched I need to stop verbalizing my pauses. I really want to work on that. Get rid of my ums and my ahs and my ers. I don't really do and so. I use so often. If you saw Vadim's video making fun of Sargon and Sargon's obsession with having a Twitter account. He's so thirsty to be on Twitter. I saw this today and just was like, there's a quote Bertrand Russell gave. And it's totally elitist in some ways. Never trust a fart. It's also sexist because it talks about things in terms of men. And it's not just that, like Bertrand Russell, he was quite progressive and liberal in some ways. But anyway, he wasn't a perfect person, but I guess who is. He's got this great quote, and for me, it always reminds me of Carl. Every time I hear Sargon explain something, I think of this quote by Bertrand Russell, which is, "A stupid man's report of what a clever man says can never be accurate because he, the stupid man, unconsciously translates what he hears into something he can understand." And this, to me, perfectly explains Sargon. Sargon is always filtering actual interesting ideas and expertise through his dumber downer, through his limited understanding of things. And his problems with stupidity are self-imposed through laziness and lack of interest and cognitive bias. He's not in any way incapable of becoming a better person or to understand things accurately. He simply lacks the will. He has no will in that way. And as a consequence, like this is proof. Like, this quote is constantly proven true by Karl. So he writes, critical race theory is a conscious attempt by Marxists to destabilize the West using race as a vector to create social unrest in order to establish conditions under which a revolution against capitalism can occur. Okay, just no. Like, you just go along that sentence, you're like, no. I know that really black-souled, if I believed in a soul, evil people like Sargon want this to be true. They want it to be true because critical theory, it's not just like, race theory is a subset of critical theory. Well, let's just look at the definition. Critical theory analyzes power relations, power structures, and because its focus is on power, it might manifest in different ways, like class analysis or whatever else. It points out unjustified hierarchies. It makes manifest the way in which power is arbitrarily or unjustly wielded or given to people. Money is power. Undeniably, money is power. If you inherit a bunch of wealth, you now have a bunch of power, and you did nothing for that. That goes against meritocracy. Therefore, for people who unfairly benefit from a system that rewards them for things that they had no merit in earning or deserving or attaining, and you point that out, it makes their power illegitimate, and it takes that power away from them, and it asks them to reassess the structures upon which authority and power is given and distributed, and that puts them at a disadvantage. And that is why white supremacists and patriarchy advocates don't like critical theory. It points out the unjustified power structures that benefit them without having any merit. So let's just look at critical theory. Look at vague definition for those of you who don't know it. And it's not, again, it's not just like race theory, this is just gender, all kinds, anything where people rely on power to structure social relations. And it's not even just in power. I mean, there's critical theory in biblical studies. We could look at biblical study critical theory as well. All right. So critical theory is a social philosophy pertaining to the reflective assessment and critique of society and culture in order to reveal and challenge power structures. That's it. That's all that critical theory does. It examines, reveals, and challenges power structures. And the only reason you would have to fear this sort of analysis is that you hold power undeservedly, that you hold power unfairly, that you are basically, in a fair system, you would have less influence than you have now. And if the idea is to get to a fairer system, we need to take some of that stuff that you've stolen, stuff that you didn't deserve, stuff that doesn't belong to you, and redistribute it. And that is what really, really threatens them. Hey Kev, how are you doing? Good to see ya. Thanks for stopping by. I saw your show last night, by the way. And I mentioned this in the chat, but I don't think you read it out. So yeah, Kevin had a show he did last night. He went off on people who are basically nodding and winking at right-wingers when they sort of like half agree on a sort of point. YouTube is censoring my phallus-based banter. Did it get taken down? I hope not. So on Kevin's show, you should go check it out if it's still up on his channel. But he talked about John Nichols, who writes for, is it The Nation or something? I forget where he writes for now. But I actually met John Nichols back in the day. When I was working for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, must have been circa 1996, because I is old AF. It was when Bill Clinton was president, and we had a visit in Madison from Al Gore. As part of the Democratic Party, I was the fundraiser / events organizer at the time. I ended up working with the White House advance team to do an event for an Al Gore visit when he was vice president. One of my jobs was to take people who were volunteers and reporters with us in the series of minivans that followed the Secret Service detail with the vice president. And we did that because, in addition to doing a formal stop, we also did, they're called like something like off the record stops or spontaneous. It's when you like a politician, presidential candidate stops at a local famous restaurant or goes to a certain shop or whatever, and they just, like, oh, we're going to pop in and say hi to the customer and to the owner of the business or whatever it is. That doesn't happen spontaneously. Let me just tell you, when they do those spontaneous stops, that's all set up because you have to have Secret Service go in and they have to check everyone. You can't literally just let Al Gore out of the van. He can't just go wherever he wants. He could get shot. So it's all pre-planned. It's all pre-organized. And we wanted the press available for him. There was an ice cream place in Madison. I forget the name of it now. But there was a famous ice cream place on the road out to the airport where he was going to catch his flight. And I had about 3 van loads of people who had volunteered for the event. They were going to have the chance to meet the vice president on the tarmac as he was leaving. That was the whole point of having these 3 vans. Also, we had reporters in the vans to get that wasn't a spontaneous stop, and to take pictures of him leaving the tarmac. So we all bundled in, our volunteers and a whole bunch of media people. We did the off-the-record stop, or whatever it was called. Then John Nichols came up to me, and he's like, well, I need you to take me back. I need you to turn the minivan around so I can go back to the offices and write my story. And we had offered the media, they weren't required to come. They're like, we're going to go and do this thing. We're going to go out to the tarmac. You can come back, you can come with and take pictures and cover it if you want. And he just felt like this entitlement because he was writing for the Cap Times. He was writing for the Capital Times in the 90s, which is like a local paper. It wasn't like the New York Times he was writing for, or the LA Times, or the Washington Post. He's writing for like the second most, he's writing for the second rated journal or newspaper in Madison. And there were only 2 newspapers. There was the Wisconsin State Journal, and there was the Capital Times. He was writing for the Cap Times, which was a more liberal paper. And I just like looked at him, I'm like, no, I have these people, they have worked hard. They are planning on going out to the tarmac to meet the vice president. And you agreed to get into my minivan to do this thing. It's not a taxi service, and I'm not going to like move 8 people out of one minivan so that you can be escorted personally back to your offices. And he got back to me, he's like, well, do you want a good story or not? I'm like, piss off. I mean, like, really, I was like, if you want to get out here and take a cab back to the office, you can do that. But I'm not going to take one of these minivans out of the Secret Service detail to ferry you back to your office so that you are inconvenienced. It was your choice to come. It's your choice to leave. I'm not going to punish other people. And he was assy about it. And so, yeah, John Nichols, POS. Should have taken him to chicken butt nuggets. Okay. I can't be old AF if I'm younger. So, see, like not this year, but not this coming 21, but in 2022, I'm going to be 50. Damn. How'd that happen? All right, so getting back to talk about entitlement, right? John Nichols feeling entitled to have an entire motorcade broken up just so he could write his dumb story for the Cap Times. So when Kevin was going off on, I was like, yeah, I know that guy. He's a jerk. He also went on MSNBC and declared that he thought Scott Walker was going to lose his recall election because there were more yard signs up for Barrett than for Walker. I'm like, if you're basing your analysis on yard signs, you are useless, John Nichols. Which he is. All right. Let's see. So with its origins in sociology and literary criticism, it argues that social problems are influenced and created more by social structures and cultural assumptions than by individual and psychological factors. That's true. We are born into systems that are pre-existing. When I go work for a company, it has an ethos already and practices and norms that have been established unless it's a brand new company, in which case you were there at the formation of it and they will probably be carried on. The problem with police departments is that they were created and norms were established when they were overtly white supremacist. And so now trying to change those norms goes against those kind of what people have been conditioned to expect and feel comfortable in. So there is a reason why critical analysis is very powerful, because it forces us to not only examine our own individual decisions, but also the institutions in which we operate and how those institutions constrain us in some ways and push us in others, and push all people in sort of like, you get conditioned working for, you become part of a system, and speaking out threatens your livelihood, might threaten your reputation, might threaten your hireability. And so as soon as you become institutionalized, you become vulnerable to that kind of shaping. Maintaining that ideology is a principal obstacle to human liberation. Critical theory was established as a school of thought by the Frankfurt School. Later sociologists describe it critical theory as critical insofar as it seeks to liberate human beings from the circumstances that enslave them. And what enslaves us? Patriarchy and white supremacy in the West. Hence, why sexists and bigots find it so threatening. So let's break down this nonsense. All right, so critical race theory is a conscious attempt. First, it's not a conscious attempt, it's an analysis. That's what it is. Critical theory is a form of analysis. It's a way of looking at human relations. And you can, it's not like it's the end-all be-all. There's a lot of ways you can analyze human behavior. Critical theory is one of them. And the reason why it's powerful is because it's reacting to very powerfully unjust systems. If we had a very just society, critical theory wouldn't really have a lot of weight, because the issues that it's pointing out would have been dealt with. So it's a conscious attempt by Marxists to destabilize the West. Carl, you are such an idiot. Like, okay, I know that I'm trying really hard to move away from ableist language. All right, I know that some people feel when they hear the word stupid or they hear the word idiot, it reminds them of stuff that happened to them. And it's not that I have a problem with not being ableist. It's that I need a set of words that allow me to describe people who are intentionally intellectually lazy, who are what's the word I'm looking for? They know, but they could know better. They could know. This isn't an issue of they're incapable. It's that they're unwilling. And so someone can give me some terms that I can use, but if you lie like this and you present this, either you know you're lying and you're dishonest, or you're very ignorant and you shouldn't be talking, because you're just making the world a worse place by spreading your ignorance around. So if you guys can help me, 50 is the new 30. Oh yeah. That's totally, I'm totally down with 50 being the new 30. Except I won't have to worry about getting pregnant. All right. All right. So, one, it's not Marxist. Marxism is an economic analysis. So the fact that Carl can't distinguish between critical theory as sociology and critical class analysis, critical, what would you call it? Yeah, class analysis is a form of critical theory, but it's based in the economic structures. It's based around the way that people have institutionalized the relations of exchanging labor for money and how those power systems operate. But that has like nothing, like Marxist analysis can't tell us anything about the white supremacist institutions built up by Americans, white American men in particular, aided by white American women, putting our hands up. Excuse me for that. It has nothing to do with Marxism. Being anti-racist isn't being pro-Marxist, but because, Carl doesn't understand what critical theory is, he's just using buzzwords. I mean, again, I hesitate to ever try to get inside Carl's mind. I can only look at the garbage that comes out of his mouth. That being said, race critical theorists might be Marxist, they might be capitalist, they might be social democrats. It's completely exogenous. Like, critical race theory has nothing to do inherently with, it's not tied to Marxism. So that's the first thing. First thing is that he lies, or he's just shockingly ignorant. I mean, you can tell me, Carl, you won't watch this. We should take a vote. Like, is Sargon deliberately lying to people, or is he so blindingly ignorant he doesn't understand what Marxist critique versus critical race theory is? Maybe I can do a poll about that. I'll probably be targeted for bullying if I did. To destabilize the West. Okay. If it's the aim here is to destabilize the West using race as a vector to create social unrest, wouldn't it also have to be the case that the structures that exist in the West are so unfair and biased as to lead to social unrest when people react to the unfairness and the oppression in them? You can only use race as a vector to create social unrest if there is a condition under which people are being exploited, murdered, discriminated against, marginalized. Did I say excluded already? I think I did. Based on their ethnic background, or race, if you want to say. I prefer ethnic background to race, but with the character limit on Twitter, sometimes that's hard to always get out there. Vote for ignorant Carl. Yeah, he is definitely ignorant. The fact is that the current conditions cause social unrest for the non-white population. Having the police shoot you in your sleep is creating social unrest. Having the police shoot you 7 times in the back creates the social unrest. Having police kneel on your neck for 8 minutes while you slowly suffocate until you die is what is causing the social unrest. It is the unequal, unfair, oppressive, murderous structures based on race that are causing the social unrest. And typical for a white supremacist, Carl wants to say it's people reacting to being murdered that's causing the social unrest, not people being murdered that's causing the social unrest. And that's pretty much the step that all anti-critical theorists take in order to attack critical theory. Critical theory looks at things that are unfair and exploitative and murderous and says, look at this thing. Look at how it operates in the big picture. Look at how people get put into this machinery and become part of it, and it keeps going. And it's, really breaking it down as to, it breaks down the illusion of individual autonomy. It breaks down the illusion of classical liberalism. It breaks down the illusion that everyone has some kind of equality under the law or equality in their experience of public life. And it says, no, this is systemically, this is built in. These problems, this unfairness, this murdering, it's built into the system. And if you want to get it out, well, then you're going to have to take away power from this group, and you're going to have to take power away from this group, and you're going to have to give power to these people, and you're going to have to restructure the power distribution into a new group over here, or maybe you were talking about money or whatever else. And again, when you start to change that system, that's what Carl thinks is social unrest. It's fighting against liberation, or it's fighting for your own liberation. That's what Carl is calling social unrest. If he lived during the American Revolution, I'm sure he would have been anti-revolution, right? Because it's about, he is has an attachment to unjustified hierarchies, to borrow a term from anarchism. And so this idea, in order to establish conditions under which a revolution against capitalism, I mean, he's really like, this is such garbage speak. This is fash speak. This is fash people trying to sound, like I said, they're doing like a Prager-esque aspiration to sounding like an academic when they're actually just talking complete bollocks. They're talking crap. The point of critical race theory is to analyze power based on how it's been taken over by or one group, one ethnic homogenous group, and how it uses power in ways to preserve their supremacy in a society. Like, critical theory isn't about getting, like, there's nothing to do with capitalism in it. You know, analyzing a problem isn't going to lead to the overthrow of capitalism, and that's what he wants to say. Just thinking these things are dangerous. Sargon wants to control your thoughts. Sargon wants to say even analyzing unfair power structures is bad because it's communism. You can't be a classical liberal and think that people should unquestionably and without resistance submit to oppression. And yet that's what because it's convenient for him. He is mad that people are complaining that they're being oppressed. He's more mad at the people complaining about their oppression than he is at the oppression. That's like the TLR, too long didn't read. TLDR. Carl is more angry at people who are expressing opposition to oppression than the oppression and the oppressors. That's really what it comes down to. Let's see, what are you guys saying here in the chat? Carl is ignorant? Yes. He read on the wiki page that critical theory draws from the works of Marx and Freud and read that to mean Marxist. Yeah, possibly. That is very, like, just because, yeah, like, you can take a structure of analysis like Karl Marx did with money and go, oh, you know what? There are parts of that also work with, like religious institutional power or wealth distribution or the way that we structure things around gender and gender identity or race or able versus, having a disability. There's a lot of ways you can take that framework and look at it. But yeah, if you touch anything that has a link to a form of analysis that is similar or draws on or was inspired by Marx, it's all Marxism. Yeah. Sargon got called a bad name, so that means he is right and not a snowflake. That's precisely. I tend to go for the Shakespearean Python route for insulting people. A greasy beef-witted measle? Yeah, I know, but I understand that it's an insult, but I don't want to necessarily just blindly insult him. What I want to point out is that he is being deliberately, either through willful ignorance or ideological blindness, he is misrepresenting the world, or putting things together that are obviously don't go together. I mean, it's like being explained exactly how to use a ladder, and then instead of using all the steps to go down, you just hold on and you like let yourself slide. Like, that's, what are you doing? Like, I just explained, you put one foot on a step, you put another foot on a step, you just grabbed it, let your feet dangle, and then you fell down and hit your head. So I don't know if it's vapid. Yeah, vapid laziness, intellectual laziness, maybe. I mean, I do try to get that, but sometimes I just, like, in my fury, I forget to use all those syllables together. All right. Let's just look here. German idealism, yada, yada, yada. Say, look at Marx and Kant. You've got, no one's complaining about Kant. They always point to Marx. Criticism. And I think the ones that I'm looking at when it comes to, like, literary criticism, like, now I don't know if this technically, biblical critical theory. I didn't realize I was doing necessarily biblical criticism when I first started getting into the Bible, but the idea of looking at the text through a critical lens and it has definitely like critical theory and thinking about things. I mean, again, there's the sociological application, there's a literary one. But yeah, so biblical criticism has historically included a wide range of approaches and questions within 4 major contemporary methodologies: textual criticism, source criticism, I think form, textual, source, form, and literary criticism. Textual criticism examines the text and it's to identify what the original text might have said. Source criticism searches for evidence for the original sources. Form identifies short units of text and seeks to identify their original setting. And then there's also rhetorical. So just the idea that we can analyze things. That's what critical theory is. It's about taking a step back and not just taking everything on its face and accepting it as is. It's about taking a step back and thinking critically about it. And nothing terrifies a bigot more than taking a step back and looking at unjustified power structures. You know, if Carl has to lie about critical theory like this, it shows you how threatening he finds it and how threatening other bigots find it. The 1776 Commission, which is Trump's idea of, but again, stealing ideas from black people, putting on a white label and making it his own. It's, what is the if the 1776 Commission is the reaction to the 1619 Project, and the 1619 Project is to understand throughout history the influence, role, and consequences of choosing legalized slavery as an economic structure into, our, and then as a consequence, as a political structure. And then as a consequence, like, it influenced how we carried out military policies. Like, understanding that thread and understanding that attempt to preserve slavery over and over and over through history, deny an entire group of people their human rights because of the color of their skin. What is the 1776 Commission supposed to do? Justify that? Oh, it was okay that white people did this. I mean, it's never going to happen because Trump is all about the moment, the branding, the title, the commercial. He's not about actual delivering on the product. He's all about the look. He's not about the substance. You manky swan, Kenny Reed. I'll try to go for intellectual laziness, but if I do, if I slip, it's not because, it's more because I don't know how else to express the divergence between what he obviously is capable of and the lie and facade he is putting up in order to lie to people, or the way that he deliberately misrepresents things in order to avoid dealing with the consequences of accepting the statement as on its face. So this is just typical, I kind of call it PragerU speak. It's a rhetoric, and for me, I'm just going to tell you, PragerU speak is a, how should I best phrase this? It's a deceptive construction of seemingly academic terms to develop an anti-intellectual discourse within the language of that academic discourse. They're trying to use what sound like academic terms against academics and academic critique and academia without actually understanding what any of those words mean. And because the audience to which they speak also has not put in the time or the effort or have not had the opportunity or have not been exposed to the ideas, they take a prima facie reading of these things, ascribing to them, this is a very long definition, I've already stopped defining it, but this is what I'm trying to get across, in that they are applying not the actual academic terms to something like race critical theory, but rather a white supremacist or a bigoted framework of what those definitions are. So they're kind of creating an alternative academic discourse that seeks to appropriate academic language, but actually use it to advance white supremacy and to advance bigotry. That's, for me, that's what I'm going to mean by PragerU speak. And there's no academic rigor. Yeah, absolutely no academic rigor. They appropriate and they steal like a white man. I'm sorry. Sorry, they're just like Trump stealing from the 1619 Project, like the American government repeatedly stealing land from the Native Americans, like the American government stealing people's lives and their labor and their children from people. Like, that was all in aid of white supremacy and all in aid of the white supremacist patriarchy. So yeah, steal like a white man. This is, again, PragerUism is stealing people's ideas and instead using them to create a false sense of equivalence to justify bigotries and unjustified hierarchies. All right. Feels like 1:30. Feels like 1:30. How am I? Look at me! Look at me go! My gosh, my internal clock is ticking on time today. That's all I'm going to do, because I'm going to get ready for my session. I'm going to set up my D&D session. If you guys want some escapism, you're welcome to come over to D&D Gaming with Christy on my other channel. I am also... all right, I'm going to go for like another 5 minutes. So if you're going to... get ready to go. We're going to get ready to go here. I finished my handbook. I wrote... so this year I've been writing... I've got a couple of co-authors, but I've written most of... Like, other than one chapter, I was the lead author on, there's one chapter coming in yet that hasn't been finished, but I am the lead author on like 8 chapters of this handbook on creating educational videos. It clocked in at over 70,000 words, of which I probably wrote at least 90% of those words. Then I also had to, I had Steve Shives copy edit it for me. He also contributed a section in one of the chapters. And then I had to pool it all together, create a table of contents, create a credits page, create a title cover, and I think it ended up being 142 pages so far. That sucked up so much of my time and energy. I ended up, I'm basically just doing live streams now, as a consequence of having to just focus on writing 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week since March. And when I wasn't doing that, I was doing other articles. All of this to say, I'm hoping now with the rest of 2020, I will start re-engaging with shorter prepared videos. Not just doing live streams, which I'll keep on doing, but I'd like to get back to making shorter, explanatory videos and things like that are more digestible than these, 1.5 hour sessions. I will also restart the Construction of Social Reality series again, because I'll have the mental space and energy to read a book. I read a chapter 3 times, read it to understand it, read it to take notes, and then read it again to make sure I have my things ready for the show and understand how it connects to the previous chapters. So hopefully in the coming months, you'll see some more short videos, and maybe just to be a bit trash, I'll pick on Carl a little bit and expose his ignorance more systemically, which I was doing on vacation when I had the time. I got 1.5 videos. I never put out the second video, but hopefully now that I'm not writing nonstop, I'll be able to do more shorter edited videos. Okay. I will check out your tweet, Transgram Girl. Thank you. And what novels am I reading? When I am writing this much, I don't... You know what I'm reading right now? This is what I'm reading. That's it. I am reading D&D as escapism. And then when I get back to it, I'm reading Luckman and Berger and Luckman's The Social Construction of Reality. And I had a series that I stopped because I just mentally burned out from writing, but I'm going to restart that in the next couple weeks. So, yes. Thank you guys for stopping by. I appreciate it. Have a good day, good morning, a good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is, whenever it is you are. I have been Christy. You guys have been awesome. I appreciate your time and attention. Come by the gaming channel if you want some escapism. And otherwise, I will see you back here next Sunday. So, yes. I just want to say goodbye from me. I'm so used to saying goodbye from me, but there's nobody to say goodbye from. So I'll just say goodbye. Catch you later.